Hello and welcome to the Spark London podcast. Real people, real talk, real estate. I'm your host, Vince Simpson, founder of Spark London, project strategists and managers. Join me as I sit down with industry experts, leaders, consultants, specialists, and perhaps even the odd contrarian. Please note that nothing in our episodes constitutes as advice. It's purely for your entertainment and inspiration only. Now, put the kettle on, make a cup of tea or your favourite overpriced ground coffee, and let's meet today's guest. Hello and welcome back. Today I am joined by Steve Berridge, Director of Fidgens, an entrepreneurial cost management firm that specialise in supporting corporate real estate clients, ideally at early project planning stages. Steve is also the host of the London Construction and Offices podcast, and he does have some fantastic guests, even if I do say so myself. And as if that wasn't enough, Steve has also recently launched BidSense, an application to support project managers help procure RFPs and construction contractors. Steve, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's very fitting that you're going to be our first guest because I was on your podcast a few months ago, and you might have actually given me the final nudge to get my Scottish tones out there to everyone else.
I think you were episode 23 from memory.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good number.
It's a good number.
So thank you very much for giving me the nudge, actually. It's great to have you here.
Pleasure. Like we said before, it's a great platform. It's a great medium.
Yeah.
And I know you were on the edge, but I'm glad I could,
over the
push
edge.
you over the edge.
Still getting used to it, I've got to say.
Video is different.
The camera setup in here, for those that don't see, there's 3 cameras pointing at us, so yeah, it's a bit different to online. But great to have you here, and I know we're going to have a fantastic chat, but I think it would be great to start with a kind of 5-minute abridged career history.
If I go right back to the beginning, as a child, I'd describe me naughty but nice. You know, I was always getting into trouble, but you know, the mischievous kind of trouble. I wouldn't say I was academic. I was smart, but I didn't apply myself as well as I could have done at school.
Yeah.
But that was fine. It got me through GCSEs, but at kind of the A level mark, that didn't serve me so well. And if I cast my mind back, I think I was politely asked to leave the school that I was in. But actually, best thing that ever happened to me. I think at that point in time, it was kind of a.
I'm saying because me too a little bit, to be fair. Yeah.
It was, it wasn't anything other than I kind of, I wasn't interested in what I was learning about.
Yeah,
that's what it came down to.
Yeah.
I left AS levels and kind of thought, well, what do I do? And for those that don't know you or know me, my father's in the industry as a QS.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child looking up, had a great lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, look, why not give that a go? And I'd done some kind of work experience, when you're 14, 15 in the business as well. So I kind of had an understanding around it and property related stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to Mid-Kent College.
That's where I studied.
There you go, small world. And did a BTEC in construction. And I think it was an overnight transformation for me. It went from, sitting in a classroom learning about stuff that I didn't have an interest in, calling the teachers by their last names, to learning really tangible, interesting stuff, construction technology, calling the lecturers by their first names and going to the pub with them at lunchtime. It was a very different dynamic, one that I thrived in. And that flew by. From there, it was kind of a natural thing. I was still enjoying it at the end of that. Went to University of West of England and did a QS degree. The sort of the lucky part of that was trying to get a summer internship, and I managed to secure a summer internship at Davis Langdon.
Yeah.
Now Acom. Yeah. With one of the directors called Neil Hamilton, who I think he might still be there. He might have left by now.
Okay.
But it was kind of 6 weeks intense in the London office, doing a lot of cab measure, to be fair. But
as a new guy, that's what
in an open plan office, feeling the buzz of London, and it was it was great. I went back to uni. The nice thing was at the end of my degree, I kind of had an into that job, which given we were talking 2009 GFC, that was really fortunate. Because had I not had that, it might have been a very different outcome when I finished.
Companies were really scaling back at that time.
Absolutely.
And I was. And me and you've spoken about this many times. I was at Como at that time, and they were scaling back the teams, and I was on the good list, thankfully. But quite a nervous time for people in the industry.
Absolutely, and my peers as well that were coming out at the same time. Were sending off letters left, right, and centre. And I can't quite remember how it happened, but most grads have to apply to the DL graduate scheme, and it's quite intense. It's days worth of interviewing. Yeah. But actually, from memory, it was a phone call to the director that I worked with previously. Said, "Look, can I come back?" Yeah. And I did. So That was 06. I think that was probably 09, end of 09, that sort of time. And when I did come back, I was dropped into the corporate real estate fit out team under Barry Hayden, Gav Trav, which suited me perfectly, if I'm honest. Looking back now, it was, incredibly fast paced. A lot of responsibility very quickly. You were kind of given projects to run, with support, but it was that's kind of where I thrived. And it meant that, I had several projects completed start to finish under my belt by the time we did the APC, which was luck, in the sense of, being given that opportunity. I could have been given new build schools in Oxford, and only get to Reba Stage 3 by the time, on one job. So that was DL. As everybody will know, at some point, DL was bought out by AECOM.
By AECOM, yeah.
5 of the partners, one of which being Barry, left with an office manager, Christina, to go and set up a company called Core 5. And I then got a phone call from Barry. I think it was a phone call, might have been an email, but we'll say phone call. Just saying, well, look, what are you doing where you are? Do you fancy coming over?
Yeah.
Which was a difficult conversation, thought process to have, because actually where we were at DL, it was great. We were working on some great projects. I had an amazing team,
and secure as well, right?
Secure,
they were
blue chip
up there in the kind of pecking order.
I'd only just got chartered.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, do I want to rise up through DL? What do I want to do? As it happens, I did take Barry up on that offer and then jumped over to Core 5. And that was, I know we've probably gone for more than 5 minutes now, but I'll rattle through it as quick as I can. Jumped over to Core 5, and that was, if I look back, probably the fondest part of my career so far. Reason being is it was 5, 6, 7 of us in a basement in Southwark, scrapping it out together. Really fast paced. It was
a startup mentality.
It was an entrepreneurial startup, which entrepreneurial and quantity surveying don't usually go together. Although we're trying.
I would never say that.
So I was at Core 5 for several years. The opportunity then arose to join Fidgens, which is a family business with John. And it was a case of what do I want to do, and it was again a very difficult decision to make. I could see a very good progression and pathway at Core 5, having got in there early, and fit out was my baby. Or join the family business and kind of have a bigger stake in that, and grow it that way. And I went for the latter. So I joined Fidgens. I think it was 11 years ago. 12 years ago now. Haven't looked back since.
Long enough, yeah.
And for those that don't know, so Fidgens is a London-based cost consultancy specialising in corporate real estate. We do some other sectors.
You do other stuff, you do.
That's John's focus. My focus is corporate real estate, and that can range from, helping project managers on a quick, fast-paced 10,000 square foot fit out, right the way up to, decent-sized schemes. So we're on with a scheme 25 Baker Street currently, and that's 84,000 square foot. So
and everything in between.
And everything in between.
Yeah, which is going back to one of the things you said about fit out. I think you're forced in a good way to learn quick when it comes to fit out. So I had a similar sort of decision to make, I guess, when I was leaving the army to join either Como and fit out, or I think it was HBG. I think I mentioned this on your podcast, funny enough, and go and build supermarkets and I think prisons. I think, thank God I didn't go down that road, right? But I never really knew at the time. I just ended up where I ended up.
If you didn't,
you don't know. But the one thing that fit out gives anyone is opportunity to learn a lot and get responsibility quick. And if you can do that in fit out, then you could kind of turn your hand to other types of construction very easily if you ever wanted to. But I don't think you can do it the other way around. That's kind of, once you're a fit out person, you're a fit out person. You get it. Kind of my view.
I think we are a unique collection of professionals, and I think definitely. That's maybe we leverage the relationship part of the project more than potentially other sectors. We're fast paced. It's usually a smaller team. We have to pull together, and I think over time, whilst the London fit out market, it's a big place. It's actually a really small market.
Small.
It's really amazing, sort of the relationships that you build over a decade.
Definitely.
Very rare now do you sit on a new project with a completely clean team that you've never worked with before.
No, not usual. No. But that's a good thing about it, and that's why we love it, I guess. Let's go back then very slightly. So the bigger firms, shall we say, and then taking that jump to Core 5, which was entrepreneurial, and then Fidgens. Let's maybe touch on the entrepreneurial side of that, because having done it myself, and there's others out there that have, and if you ever have that chat over a beer or a coffee, it's always that, oh yeah, you've done it, you get it. It's not for everyone, and a lot goes through your mind. So what was going through your mind kind of taking those entrepreneurial steps?
I mean, we're going back some time now, but I think if you look inside yourself, you kind of know whether you're entrepreneurial or not. And actually, if I sort of go back several decades, at school, I can remember I was selling fake IDs in the playground, making good money.
Is there a statute of limitations on
statute of limitations? Novelty IDs, actually, I think they were called.
Oh, okay.
Right. There was, I had a paper round. I was running a call centre at 17, and I remember the MD sitting me down saying, "Look, there's a future here," and I kind of thought, "Oh, this isn't what I want to do."
Yeah.
Getting into the big corporate was great. It was a huge achievement. Parents were proud. It was all that sort of stuff. But actually, after a while, you realise I could almost map out my next 40, 50-year career.
Yeah, sure.
Almost to the year, what that would look like. Yeah. And look, there's nothing to be sniffed at there. It would have been a great career, and it serves a lot of people very well.
Yeah.
For me, that I almost need unlimited upside. I need to know that, whatever I'm going to do, there's no ceiling on what I could do.
Yeah.
There's obviously risks that go alongside with that. Mm-hmm. But, it's, back then my ambitions was to be, the partner of fit out at DL.
Yeah.
Ask me that now and I couldn't think of anything worse. And that's because it doesn't suit or match, my internal metrics of what success is, or, what gets me out of bed in the morning. I think, the jump over to Core 5 was an interesting one. And I think, at that time, I massively looked up to Barry, particularly Barry, because he was the head of fit out. And I don't subconsciously whether I could see that was a faster path to becoming, to ownership, maybe, possibly. I think it was more flattering. I think kind of they were setting up something new and very exciting, and they were 5 experts, and I was their first call.
To be asked.
Well, as far as I know, I was their first call. Yeah. I might not have been.
Yeah. You might never know.
Exactly. Everyone else might have said no. But it was that buzz and that excitement, and that's kind of what I constantly look for now, kind of day to day. Hence the software stuff on the side. It's tech, it's entrepreneurial. It's about doing things differently. I'll say if you do what everyone else does, you'll get the same what everyone else gets. And,
firm believer in that.
And that's
firm believer in that.
There's a place for that, and there's that doesn't suit, every corporate client that we might come across that wants a QS in the room wearing a tie. But I think those days are pretty much behind the industry now, and people are understanding that it's more about not what you're wearing, it's about how you do it and why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would obviously agree and relate to that. Let's maybe build on that then. So, not to be too derogatory to our industry and our peers, our colleagues.
Of course not.
But there is, and I think you've just kind of hit the nail on the head, there's clients that seek a certain type of advice and consultancy. Let's call it bigger firms. And then there's the other end of that scale, really, and it's certainly where I and Spark operate. Pros and cons. And again, not to be too derogatory, because there's differences. But I'm starting to hear more and more about these differences becoming more important and people recognising the differences between larger and smaller firms these days. What's your thoughts, sir?
I have several.
Good, let's hear them.
Well, look, I think, going back 10, 20 years, nobody got sacked for hiring IBM. And I think there was an element of, if it's a large enough project, it requires, a large, big corporate, QS, call it Davis Langdon. Yeah. And at that time, absolutely agree. But I think part of that was because there wasn't a credible alternative. It was big corps or very, very small fish.
Yeah.
Over time that's changed. And I actually think almost too much so now
in terms of the
commoditization of of the industry.
Yeah.
Look, I think, and you can think of it from a couple of perspectives. From a selfish perspective, from the QS, it makes perfect sense to go into one of those bigger corporates, on day one, because that they are able to give you the exposure to that volume of projects that you require, to that diverse range of projects that you require. They have the training, that you need to get you through the APC. And it is hard. It's, I say, partly like a driving test. You need to learn a certain way to pass a certain test.
Yes.
It doesn't make you a good surveyor the day you pass.
No.
It just means that you've got some letters after your name. So I think from a younger person coming into the industry, there's definitely a place for those big corporates. Because I benefited from that, no doubt.
Me too. Absolutely. Yeah.
From a client perspective, even now you are going to get certain clients that want to work. If they're a type of client that values wearing a suit, minutiae detail, that corporate brand, then that's fine, and they do exist, and those businesses are still around. But what we find is that most clients are moving away from that now, in the sense of, they want the owner-led experience from a consultancy offering. They want to know that, when they give a consultancy, for argument's sake, us a project, that I'm going to be the one that's living and breathing that project, that I'm bringing my decades of experience to that particular project, and not putting on, I'll come along to the lunch at the beginning and then drop on a couple of grads and I might see you at the end. So I think I've definitely seen that shift. Yes. And I think the benefit for the client is that, they're getting that hands-on experience.
Definitely.
We said before about sort of AI, there's a lot of people now with a lot of knowledge in the room, but not necessarily a lot of experience.
It's quite worrying.
Well, it is, there's pros and cons. We can touch on it.
We will get to that,
But it's, and I see it time and time again where, and to say it's just from big corps, I think would be disingenuous, but typically it's more big corps when there are younger PMs, or across the board, PMs, QSs, whatever you want to call it, that have been promoted quickly, that are running jobs because that's the model, because it has to be, from a financial perspective, that, are doing the job, but aren't really adding the value. So yes, they're there chairing meetings. Yes, they are administering the contract, but it's about having the ability to take a step back.
Yes. Do you think, and I've kind of got my views on this, and that in certain roles, you need to be tested. And here's my kind of context to that. So both when I was a contractor, you need to do a few tough jobs to really be tested, to know that you're a good project manager, contract manager, whatever it is. And I'm not sure everyone does or has been. And I actually kind of think the same for consulting as well. And if I'm honest, if you're in a global property firm, in a project management team, you can be tested, but it's a very different kind of project journey sometimes to being out there in an SME, being truly tested as a consultant.
You've got that buffer around you.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's tested as much as they should be to be able to warrant a title or that promotion or whatever it is they're after. It just sometimes feels a bit automatic.
It's actually, I think it's exactly that, but it comes back to talent retention. It becomes almost I've been here for 2 years, I've got chartered, I now should be an SPS. I've now been here for another year, and actually I've had a job offer from another blue chip consultancy firm. So I actually now, for you to keep me here, I want to now be an associate. And quite quickly you can see it that you'll have a director in the market that might have only been qualified for 5 years. That's not to say that they're not great at their job.
No.
But there's no substitute for time, for reps.
And being able to deal with those trickier situations that you have been through yourself and before and been tested, in my view.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, interesting. One thing that kind of maybe not so much building on that per se, but maybe again, having your own business and ultimate responsibility for every project you're on, same as me, is about the passion behind how you go about your services and how you advise your clients, etc. And I think you said a moment ago there, it's about that owner-led experience. Spark will turn 5 in February. It's gone very quick, 5 years old, and it's fundamental to how I've managed to go 5 years, effectively. How do you treat your clients? How do you really kind of bring out your entrepreneurial or your USPs, whatever you want to call it, to your clients?
It's really difficult to kind of put my thumb on the exact thing. I think part of it is, a director-led experience. And I think it's what we said previously, going back 5 years, that was a truly unique USP, and almost enough, because it was big corps over here or director-led consultancy over here. Great. However, over the last 5 years, we've seen a hell of a lot of director-led consultancies.
I'd say it was saturated,
and it's completely. And it's kind of, and I was going to talk about it later on, but almost getting to the point of supply and demand for consultancy services. It's becoming a commodity to a certain degree. From a technical perspective, let's assume that we're all capable. We're all competent cost managers. It's about what you layer on top of that to give the client that added value, or that not even the client, the project and the project team, that added value. What I pride myself on is empathy. It's I see it time and time again with other QSs in the market, almost proud about how they've managed to screw a contractor for this, or a PM getting the architect's fees down for this, thinking that they're getting best value for their client. But in reality, they're disincentivizing the project team, or on the odd occasion where I have run projects, smaller projects for other clients, a big passion of mine is that people are turning up to my meetings engaged, happy, comfortable, feeling safe, not worried about making mistakes or saying something stupid. And I think if you can build a team that's the vibe, then that's where the client gets that added value. That's where better ideas flow. That's where the contractor might feel comfortable coming forward with something that he might not have said in a different environment. And I think my job, whilst I am cost, actually I spend a hell of a lot of my time, engaging with all of the different people around the table. Hand-holding's the wrong reason, but just helping them get the best out of what they're doing. If I know you as a PM, what your goals are for this project, or what's a success for you, same for the contractor, same for the architect, same for the client, then I can tailor my service to ensure that everybody wins. And by default, I win. An easy project makes everybody's fee more efficient.
It really does, and I'm a massive believer in that. And as you know, and we've spoken about this many times before, thinking a bit more upfront, I think, is
definitely
lacking. And sadly, my listeners and viewers will be sick of hearing me say that on probably every episode. But I'm a firm believer in it, and that's why we've repositioned to project strategists, etc. But I feel, and a couple of my other guests have agreed, that our industry has just gone in a bit of a headspin. Too quick, cost is too much of a problem. We don't have time to do everything properly, shall we say, or even time to take a breath and think about things. But I think that promotes tense environments. 100%. And it promotes, sadly, some, and I've got to say some, organisations or individuals being a little bit kind of pass the ball over, and it's a little bit like the ball's back in your court. There's even a document control platform that uses that terminology, ball in court, which is really annoying. Okay, but we've just kind of got ourselves there, where it's like, right, it's somebody else's problem now. It's just about kind of pinging around emails, and it's really, really frustrating. How do we solve that? I mean, I've got my ideas.
Not in one podcast.
How do we? Okay, well, episode 2, season 2. How do we do it? I mean, let me kind of start that conversation or that question. You spoke about empathy. It's easy to say. Do you think our industry can empathise enough?
I think everyone has it within them. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised and used and strengthened, and I don't think it gets used enough. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about time, and it's about forward planning. And I think we've all seen it. PM comes along either to us or client direct to you. I've got a lease expiry and I need to be in 6 months. Okay, well, you've known about that for the last 5 years. So I think that's the first point, in my opinion. So if you're a client that has a lease expiry, get in touch with Vince early so that we can kick off the process. But I think it all stems from time, because with enough time, people can make informed, rational, calm decisions. From a cost perspective, what I see time and time again is that we get appointed on a project, and the client will say something along the lines of, it's 20,000 square feet. We know the building. We've had the budget signed off, and crack on. Okay, well, what budget? It's £125 a foot, £150 a foot. Okay, based on what? And you can see that there's nothing there. There's no substance behind what that was based upon.
Yeah.
An agent said this, or it would cost us this last time, and we've added on 20%. But these are all actual things that
I hear them all the time. I do, yeah.
And it's, our first task is to, okay, right, what are we doing? How are we doing it?
Got to unpick it.
What do I feel is a realistic project budget for the project, and not just construction cost, but team costs.
Yeah.
Better program. Just here's a master budget.
Yeah.
And how does that compare against what you've had signed off? And it happened, on one of our other larger jobs, there was a big disparity between what they'd had signed off and what I was telling them this project was going to cost.
Yep.
And it was, guys, what do you want to do? Because yes, we can nickel and dime this job, and we can VE the arse out of it and get us down, not to your budget, but closer. Mm-hmm. Or we can have a hard decision now with your board, get the budget that we need and have a great project. And thankfully we went for the latter.
Yeah.
But QS's love to provide upfront early advice to clients.
Absolutely.
And the reason being is it's not a hugely complex thing for us to do. It's not massively time consuming. We've got the benchmarking, and at that point in time it's very high level. Mm-hmm. The value that you get from that as a client is immeasurable. And 9 times out of 10, the QS wouldn't charge the client for that information.
No,
it's take it, and good for good spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that doesn't happen, and you end up with a project that doesn't have the right budget, it makes running an empathy, let's call it an empathy-based project, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but fundamentally it means a project where everybody's getting on, where everyone's unified in one vision and one goal.
Getting that job done.
It's very hard to do that. If you haven't got enough money, then we're going to be tasked with screwing the contractor as much as we can. The architect's not going to really realise the vision that they want for the project because we can't afford it. The contractor gets defensive. The architect's got the hump because what he thought was going to be a really nice BCO award-winning project is now like any other fit-out that he's done before. I can almost...
And it was painful together.
And it was painful together. And we've all fallen out.
Yeah, exactly.
I can almost pin it back to that initial, if we can set the project up correctly, give it the right foundations at the start, it opens up the doors for a successful project.
Wholeheartedly agree. And easy to say on my podcast, the guest, but that's kind of Spark's approach to the market these days, repositioning the project
website here.
Yeah, we are going to do pop-ups once I figure out how to do it. But let's go back a step, right? Because I hear all of that all the time, and for me it is a massive timing issue. And it's not just about the budget; it's a huge part of it, but it's the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the lack of due diligence, even on a 5,000 square feet white box that has been well maintained, right? And your agent has given you that advice, or sometimes a D&B contractor. Now, there's great agents and great D&B contractors out there is, but equally, sometimes they're not given the best advice, right? And clients sadly do believe it and go forward on it. I'm going to maybe not put you on the spot deliberately per se, but if we were to have a debate, how many projects, typical fit-out projects, actually go over time and over budget? I am putting you on the spot.
No, the ones we're involved with, none, obviously. Of course. No, that's not true. I think, a lot of projects do go over budget, but I think there's reasons as to why.
Yeah.
Whether that's client change, whether that's, it's set up incorrectly in the first place. Yeah. There is definitely...
But there's always a root cause, though.
Yeah, but I also think there's ways out of that. And what I typically see is that if you have a project that doesn't have enough time or enough budget to start with, then there's a default.
Yes.
We make it go D&B.
Yeah.
Thinking that that's a mechanism to somehow wave a magic wand and bring those two metrics back in to where they need to be. And you don't get something for nothing. So I think, I'd say it's most projects, every project
I'd agree with that.
has a cost or program issue, but that's an issue to be managed. And it can change from stage to stage.
Yeah.
It can, happen post-con, if there's a shed load of changes.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily anybody's individual fault, except the PM, obviously, who's managing the process. It'll be a collaboration of factors that led to it.
It always is a number of factors, but I always, again, I guess this is me, the project manager hat going on, right? If you kind of were really, and I have done this, analyse projects, respectively, and I guess we kind of do it in a lessons learned that we kind of have sometimes, but no one really picks up on the lessons.
Do you not think you only do those, though, typically, or, on the projects where something's gone wrong? Because I think you should flip that, and actually you should do that on the projects that go well to work out.
We've done that as well. Yeah, we do. We do that. We absolutely do that. But the bits that people are interested in is, right, how do we fix it for next time? So it's usually a project that's gone a little bit off skew. And it always, I'm making a big statement here. It always has come down to time and not enough thought up front. It's exactly what you said at the start. It's, I've got 6 months to get on with it. Well, get on with what? And it's a brief question. It's a workplace strategy question. It's a budget question. And this is just so obvious, but always underlooked. The due diligence piece. Oh, it's a perfectly brand new building that's been sat empty for 5 years and not maintained. So you think those fan call units are going to work, right? And it's all a bit technical and all that kind of stuff, but that stuff matters. And it's always going to compute to time and money. And it's just not enough kind of thought given up front. Anyway, there you go. I could probably go on about that all day.
I agree.
But we'll choose not to. So what's the solution? You, I know, and me share the fact of getting in earlier.
Yep.
How do we change not opinions on that as such, but how would we stand out?
I think it's an educational piece, and unfortunately, it's a really hard market to get into in the sense of what we're trying to educate is clients and end users about this. I'm going to call it almost free resource. In the sense that professional consultants, will happily provide upfront. Assuming it's not too time intensive. But they'll provide that, to help you. But it's about how you get that message to end users, and that's a very difficult market to focus on because it's so diverse. And I think about this all the time. It's trying to work out the touch points that clients have for earlier in the process to be able to have that. So that could be agents, for example. It's rather than the agents just giving the advice that to try and get a deal across the line.
Surely that never happens.
Well, as I said, there's good agents and bad agents,
there is,
and most are good.
Yes.
It's about forming those relationships that look, great. We think this is for you. Why don't you go and speak to, whether it's you guys, whether it's us, whether it's any other,
just
anyone
get
in the market,
some early advice.
Get some independent, external, very quick advice to help shape that project for you.
Absolutely. Almost strategize the project.
Well
See
said.
what I've done there.
That's exactly what I've done
there.
Yeah.
But we need to keep educating. We really, really do. Hello, me again. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to give a few seconds to our sponsors. Yes, it's us, Spark London. At Spark London, we are not just project managers, we are project strategists. And yes, there is a huge difference. Clients come to us to avoid the same old project mistakes, cost overruns and delays by thinking strategically about their project. To find out more, visit us at spark.london or find us on LinkedIn. All links are in the show notes. Now back to the conversation. One big thing that is hugely important to any project is procurement. And both from a consultant perspective and contractor perspective. Again, I also think that, whatever the chain of kind of passing the baton on, is it from agents? Sometimes there's a D&B firm involved in that kind of discussion with clients.
And that for us is a really unique situation that we love to get involved with. So you've got a client that somehow has got on the radar of a D&B contractor and look, fair play to them. In terms of business development, there's a lot to be learned from how they operate. But, they're in. What we like to do is be dropped in the middle of that. And that provides two things. From the contractor's perspective, they know that they've got an impartial, safe pair of hands to help administer the contract and ensure that everything's run smoothly. But from a client perspective, they get that confidence that, particularly if they're negotiating with a D&B contractor because of program and lack of time. That they're paying a fair price for the work that they're getting. It's not going to be a competitive price given the dynamics that are at play in that particular project. But it's going to be fair for the situation that the client's in and the time that they've got to operate with. Absolutely. Sorry, I interrupted. Go on.
No, that's fine. No, and again, I've been there 1,000 times myself where you get brought into that mix, but at that point, it's almost like the fate of the project has been sealed.
The key metrics are already done.
Absolutely.
There is no program.
And
the last one that we got dropped in on, they were about to sign were they about to sign a contract, or they needed a contract, and it was kind of, who's doing that? And and at that point, that's what should have been months worth of work. Basics. But for whatever reason, it's indefensible. But it's if it's a lay client that. This might be their first office. Might be their second. It's not what they do day to day. Why should they know how to do it?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of why we want to be there to offer that education, advice, It's silly things like, a 30-item checklist about what you need to think about when you're doing your next office.
Yes.
28 of the points you might already know, but if you pick up 2 that you didn't, great.
And they will absolutely compute to value. They
100%.
will absolutely do it. And I've seen your checklist, by the way, and they all do add value. So I guess the summary of all of those last 5 minutes was about earlier, but do get the right advice. Not the easiest advice.
Early and advice.
Not what seems like the only people advising you at that
Impartial
point in time.
advice, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the right experience.
Couldn't have said it better.
So building on that, let's talk about experience. Knowledge versus experience, and dare I say,
AI.
common sense. We're kind of getting there. But knowledge, experience. Big firms, smaller firms, more senior people, junior people, across the industry. What do you see? What's not to repeat what we've just spoke about, but what do you see from an experience perspective when everyone sat around that table, clients paying a lot of money? Good, bad, indifferent? Where do you think that the experience level is across the industry just now?
I think it changes from project to project, client to client, contractor to contractor.
Yeah.
I think, and I am biased because I run a niche cost consultancy, and we're all very experienced. It's I have several projects, let's say, where I'm working with very junior counterparts around the table. And that's not a criticism, because actually for where they are in terms of in their career path, they're actually bloody good.
Yeah.
The issue is that it is just them, and there isn't a director that's sitting next to them at the table, giving them that guidance. And I remember, when I, way back in the day, it was, yes, I was given a project to run, but I wasn't doing it on my own, and there was always a director there that was there to, about almost either next to me or someone next to me in the office. Yeah. And maybe part of that is that for the last 3 or 4 years that we haven't necessarily been sitting in an office. So, the junior guys that would have been learning by osmosis, sitting, in an open plan office, haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah,
but
not exposure.
I see them running projects, and it isn't just PMs. It could be contractor QSs, it could be architects, M&E consultants, QSs.
Yeah.
They're running projects, and yes, they're doing the jobs that need to be done. But it's almost like a tick box exercise. It's, I've issued minutes for the meeting. Great, tick.
Yeah.
It's, I've shouted at the contractor, tick. I've given the QS a hard time over the cost, tick.
Yeah.
It's having that knowledge is one thing, but it's the experience of how to apply that knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think AI has made it even harder, because actually everyone sitting in the room now is incredibly well informed, which can make them seem more experienced than they actually are. And I always say that, it's maybe from a PM perspective, it's your job to lead the ship to the destination where it wants to get to,
100%.
or where the client wants it to get to. And you can be bumbling along at 1 or 2 degrees off course, and everything feels fine for the whole way.
You don't notice
until you get to the end, and you're quite some way off where you wanted to be. Now, whether that's program, cost, quality, or the fact that you get to the end and nobody likes each other.
Yes.
And fundamentally, that's, whilst the client might get the office that they want, if the whole team don't like each other as a result, then that's not a good project from my perspective. Particularly when you think of that might only be one job you do for that client, but you've got the next decade or two
with some of the other people,
with most of the other people around the table, particularly in the London market.
Yeah. I totally agree. I've got to say though, my approach to project management, if I kind of put that label on what we've done historically, is goal focused. I do get the empathy, I do get the collaboration piece, I really, really do. I always aim to start there, I do. But equally, when it comes to some of the more experienced people in the room, sometimes it's just like, right, you're experienced, but you're not quite focusing on the goal. Sometimes, again, maybe it's a symptom of not enough money, maybe not enough time, whatever it may be. But I do kind of wonder, do we sometimes find more problems than the solutions, and we kind of lose sight of the goal and the client's aspirations? It becomes more of a, and it's really annoying, an us and them, or a them, and everyone just seems to point the finger. I'm talking about kind of your small to medium, harder, faster projects where intrinsically they're just tricky from the outset. Do you see that, or do you think it's a team dynamic thing that we've kind of got there over the last 5-10 years? What do you think it is?
I think the them and us thing is probably the worst it's ever been in my career. Which, considering we've gone through GFC and all that sort of stuff, you thought it would have been bad back then. But now, I can see it. You turn up to, and it depends on the project. Some projects that we're on have got the most amazing dynamic. And that's part luck, in terms of the personalities that end up sitting around the table, a lot of experience, or you can have an incredibly good team that might not be that experienced, but is led by someone experienced and can see that. It's kind of the PM's role to ensure that those relationships are forming around the table. I mean, silly things like ensuring that the team might have an offsite, might have a lunch, might have a drink, might have that conversation outside of the project room. So those relationships are formed. I think, the them and us thing, part of that is the whole no time, no money. But I think that also rolls into fees. I mean, if you look at cost of living, inflation over the last 20 years and compare that to what professional fees have done over the last 20 years, you realise that, it's a very competitive market out there from professional fees. Back to the point about sort of the saturation of niche consultancies in the industry. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of competition, and we've had it on several jobs where we're by no means the cheapest cost consultant in the market. A, because we don't need to be. B, because we don't need that volume of work, so we need to chase it. But where we've put in what we think are quite sensible fees, and we find out by how far off the mark we were. Well, A, we wouldn't want to do it. But B, you just think it's that's not the right fee to get the level of service that the client wants or needs to get a successful outcome. So you have architects turning up with ever growing lists of CDP because they're not getting paid enough. Because they're because they're not. They've look at all of the fees. Look, it's a hard conversation to have with the client. You should pay more. Why should I pay more? It's just QSing. Yes, fine. We use Excel, but it's not. It's you want the right QS in the room, and you've got to pay for that. I always say we're free. If it's a 75k QS fee, I can almost guarantee you we're going to save you and some more than that. You might not see it, as a physical number on a piece of paper, but from how we can help shape the design to make it more efficient, to how we can, negotiate with the contractor during the tender process, negotiate on the client's behalf post-contract without damaging the relationship.
That's the real skill.
And you'll never see it from a client's perspective. You just need to know that,
but it's intangible value, right?
Part of it is, I've been in the market for long enough and I've got the relationships with enough of the market now that, I can say to a contractor, look, this isn't going to fly, whether it's a particular change post-contract and explain to them why. And whereas, a more junior QS or junior PM will go into battle, we don't do that. We can just calmly explain and bring them around to a unified way of thinking that benefits everybody in the long run. Happy project, quicker project. Yes, you might not get paid for that one change, but we're finishing the job a week early.
Absolutely.
And everyone's happy.
Yeah, totally agree. And that is when you're in the room. Sometimes, the client hasn't got, and I'm talking from experience recently, put a fee proposal in because...
This is just going to be a rant, isn't it?
Well, I think we knew it was going to be 50. That particular client was advised by an agent, again, on what the PM fees should be, without ever talking to a PM at that point. And we're pretty cost effective because we're nimble, but they were a third of what the project needed. And in the end, I said,
but the sort of the aspirations are already sort of met. So the client in his mind already thinks the fee should be this.
Absolutely.
So when you come in at a reasonable fee, it's too expensive.
Yes, absolutely. It's pure context.
But what was that fee based on? I don't know. Well, the agent said it was. But what program was the agent thinking about? What procurement strategy was the agent thinking about? And it's
indeed, and that's an opportunity to get in the room, right? But sometimes does make me think. There's times when there's not a PM or a QS in the room. What happens in those projects, right? And we all hear the horror stories. We do, but we also hear ones that go very well because there are projects that go very well in that situation. But always get some advice, just always. That's the end of the mantra there. Talking about performance, and it's a tenuous link in a procurement of consultants and contractors.
Right.
Let's chat about BidSense.
What do you want to talk about?
Tell me what it is and tell the viewers what it is.
Okay. So taking a step back, throughout my career, I've been involved in hundreds of contractor interviews. And in terms of how they're managed, how they're chaired, how they're scored, varies wildly. But that can be from we're not scoring it, we're just going to do it and kind of make a decision on the day how we think it went, to sometimes there might be a scrap of paper being passed around the table, or in the sort of more technical scenarios, somebody might have an Excel sheet, but it's an offline Excel sheet
with a formula for the weighting that never seems to work.
Never quite seems to work.
Been there.
Yep, and we had it recently on another project where it ended up. It was an Excel sheet, offline Excel sheet, and the scores ended up being two contractors were neck and neck at the end of the day. But because of how it had been scored and essentially the lack of clarity, it was kind of, well, who are we going to go with then? And it ended up being kind of who do we think? With that in-room bias that went along with that. So that was kind of the initial problem that I wanted to look at. So we went away and kind of worked out, well, what are the problems that probably a PM has in terms of chairing that and hosting that. Sometimes it's a QS, but majority of the time it's the PM. A couple of things. It's being able to create a scorecard that matches the client project vision, success goals of the project. What's important to them? Is it program? Is it quality? Is it cost? It's then about being able to weight that. And it's then about being able to invite other members of the team to be able to score that scorecard live in real time in an interview environment. And that was where the core idea came from. And so we went away and we built it, called BidSense. And we started having conversations with PM firms because it's, from day one, it can't be the perfect product because, it needs to be used and we need to iterate on it. Quite quickly, the feedback came back with, look, this is great and we understand it. But actually we might only be doing 2 to 3 tender interviews per month. But actually, for every project that we're on, we're actually interviewing or we're getting RFPs from 5 QSs, 5 architects, 5 M&E consultants, IT AV consultants. And I said, well, how are you reviewing and assessing those? And it's, we go through it and, we might review the cost and we might do a matrix. But there's no sort of real system of record about how those decisions are made and how that's stored. And he said, could we use BidSense for that? And I said, it was kind of a light bulb moment. Rather than adding 5 contractors, add 5 consultants. So in short, it's a platform tool for PMs to manage the consultant and contractor scoring process. So you can create a project, create a scorecard, add the contractors, drag and drop their technical information, their submissions underneath each contractor, and invite panel members in to score in real time, whether that's client, architect, PM. And a big part of that, I think, not only as a PM, it gives you a live pulse on the room as we're going through.
Real time.
So you can see, how the interviews are going. You can help kind of spot those inconsistencies that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise. So, if you're looking at this panel live and only you as the PM get to see all of the scoring data, everyone else just gets to see their own. Theirs, But you can see that, Party A and Party B have both scored the same item as a 1 and a 10. That's not possible, or it should at least be looked at into. But at the end of the day, what it means is that when you make a decision, contractor A, consultant B, you have a system of record there for governance. So we'll call it a decision governance matrix or decision governance platform, I think is the term that we're kind of ending on. So, as a business owner, if you're either a very large business or a scaling business, as that business grows and you've got more people underneath you that are making those appointment decisions, you might not be involved day to day. But you get the peace of mind that all of the appointment decisions that your business is making is defensible. Should it ever be called into question? And that peace of mind is priceless. Definitely. In my opinion. Definitely, it started off as a very small kind of tool. It's now kind of growing into more of a platform, and AI is going to become a big part of that. So it's kind of.
I was gonna say, where's the, and this does probably get us into AI, right?
Yeah, like seamless flow.
So where does it fit just now, or where will it? Do you think it's going to go for that application?
Absolutely, good question. So for now, it's a scoring tool. And actually, whilst it's complicated, it's quite simple in terms of what it does. So it's create a tool, create a scorecard. The nice thing is you can create it very quickly, add the teams, and away you go. Where we see the real value coming is when we plug in an LLM to help provide that added benefit to the users. And the initial sort of 4 that we're thinking about is live bias detection, so that it's watching the scores, and I don't mean bias necessarily in a bad sense, but people do score things differently, and it's a 2 and a 7. That's a big swing. So let's flag that. Let's gamify the experience. Let's flags up in orange, and as a PM, I would say it's your job to get the best out of a day's worth of interviews. No point in just sitting there and being spoken at by 4 contractors for 4 hours. It's about engaging and sucking information out of them. So that's part of it. One of the worst jobs I have is giving feedback to the 3 or 4 contractors that didn't win it. But currently, the way that works is you ring them up. Really sorry, great pitch, great interview. You didn't win it.
Why?
Oh, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm looking at the scores. It's just a bunch of numbers, so I'm just going to say that you just didn't score as high as the other contractors.
Yeah.
And the reason is that the narrative behind how and why people score isn't lost. It's not captured. So we want to. That is part of it. But it means that if everyone is putting the narrative into how they're scoring, and there's a scratch pad for the notes that we all typically make on paper that end up in the bin, the LLM can aggregate those at the end of the process and can very quickly provide a narrative to each unsuccessful contractor.
Actually give feedback,
proper feedback as to where you were different. And there's, I always think you're going to need a human buffer to work out what's sensitive and what's not. But to give that feedback to contractors who, quite frankly, have put a lot of time and effort and cost into doing that bid. It's unfair just to turn around and say, well, there's not much we can tell you. We want to give you as much as you can to maximise the next chance of you winning. So that's another one.
Yeah.
Then I'm trying to think, how many was that? 2, 3?
That was 2.
That was 2.
Yeah, that was 2.
APIs for recordings is another one. So we talk about BidSense being kind of the system of record for decision governance. You have your scorecard. You've put the technical documents in. You can, and I'm not going to say quite easily, but it's plausible that you can tap in as Team or a Zoom's link into the report, into the software as well. So what happens is that you've got the technical submission, the scores, the narrative, the interview physically recorded, either video or just audio, a transcription of that, all in one place. So, and let's just say that we're doing a £200 million public project. Should that decision about appointment ever be called into question in 10 years' time, it's all in one place.
And it's a really important decision point on any project.
And
you're right. We seem to rely on an Excel spreadsheet
or less than
that,
a
lot of subjectivity,
or just we've gone with X because we just think that's the right thing to do. And listen, it absolutely probably is, and I don't think that it's. I don't think an Excel spreadsheet should ever overtake professional opinion within the room.
Sure,
because that's what you're paying for. But what we want to do is kind of give that team, that professional team, the scoring data and the ability to not necessarily recommend the cheapest contractor, which we see more often.
Which we see more often,
And I've had it. It's you've got contractor A and contractor B, and they're 100 grand apart, 200 grand apart. The more expensive contractor on the day was better. Whether that's from a team perspective or from something else. But the client turns around and says, well, but you said all 4 were capable of doing the job. And you're right, all 4 are capable of doing the job. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the list in the first place. But,
but who demonstrated it the best?
Who demonstrated it? Who demonstrated it against the weighted metrics that you said as a client were important to you on this particular project. And we want to be able to provide the data that enables a team to make a more expensive recommendation. That enables the client to report into their board to make a more expensive recommendation. Because I think if we can kind of, and I'm going to say, our mission is to fix procurement across the industry, which is a really woo-woo kind of thing. But taking it back to basics, if we can ensure that every appointment decision is based on value, not cost. Think of the problems that solves.
Absolutely.
You get contractors no longer pitching jobs to be the cheapest contractor. You get contractors pitching jobs to ensure that they're the best value contractor. And that opens up, because it almost removes the cost issue that we spoke about earlier.
I was just thinking that it's going to take us full circle to avoiding the problems at the start. Or some of the problems at the start.
Some of the problems. It helps.
Definitely.
So but that's about you've got to give a team and a client the data to be able to do that, and that currently doesn't really exist. So look, that I'm well aware that there are PM firms and QS firms out there that maybe they do have a very good Excel scoring matrix workbooks. Great. Use them. I know a lot more that don't.
But there's an alternative.
And
actually, it's going to take a lot of load off the PM, because it's a semi kind of autonomous kind of system. You upload, it does the weighting for you, whatever it may be. but the times I've spent on Excel spreadsheets, playing with it, typing it in manually, what's the weighting, and even that's subjective.
Adding another scorer, which screws up your formulas on the front page.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone told me once that if you have an Excel sheet that you're using for collaboration, no, doesn't work. It's not there for that. And I think, back to the chat GPT, from a user experience, I often find that some people sitting around the table in an interview don't know how to do tender interviews.
Yeah.
It's not I don't ever remember being taught how to do tender interviews. And I don't know from an architect perspective and an M&E consultancy perspective, whether you're taught how to get the most out of an interview process. Because what I find is people turn up, sit there and listen.
Yeah.
And for me, if you've read the technical submission, and I say if because I've seen it where they don't, and part of this software is it's encouraging the panel members to log in to look at the technical submissions before interview, and then you've got the LLM AI part of that can. It's the architect coming in. Great. Well, we've summarised the four proposals. These are the things that we think you might be interested in. Yeah. You might not, but maybe think about asking these questions. We want to get the most out of an interview.
100%. Because it is such an important part of any project, right? Because what happens after that, maybe not so much quite with the consultant RFPs, because they've generally got should have a bit of a softer landing. But when it comes to contractor interviews, if you make a decision within that 72 hours-ish, whatever it may be, it's go after that, right?
Especially if it's not enough program.
Such a fundamental milestone in any project.
Correct.
You should spend time on it and get it right.
Correct. And we see contractors winning projects because they are $100,000 cheaper on a £3 million scheme.
Yeah.
And yes, they are $100,000 cheaper day one, but that doesn't mean they're going to be $100,000 cheaper at the end of the job.
No, definitely. That gap, and again, I've done some kind of retrospective reviews on this. That gap shrinks to a very negligible gap on most projects. And again, it takes us back full circle to what we said at the start. Think about what we're trying to achieve out of the project, and procurement will be part of that, and it doesn't always mean it's got to be the cheapest contractor.
Cost is only one success metric, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many other factors that come into play. So that's the product, BidSense. In terms of where we are, so it's live. It's not for sale as such to the general public. So we're now partnering with a handful of London-based PM firms where they're going to start using it. And it's basically what we're saying is use it. Tell us what's wrong with it, and we're going to refine it. And then try and break it, and we're going to refine it because we want it to become a tool that it's just second nature for you guys, for everybody else to use it. So if anyone's interested, just DM me, and we'll get you set up.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Look, we covered a hell of a lot there, and I knew that we were going to get into a bit of a whinge, so that's good.
I think we knew that from our podcast.
We did. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Did we whinge about the same stuff? I can't remember what we covered off.
Maybe I did.
Yeah.
Right, so on that note, let's finish off on a little bit of fun, if that's all right.
Go on.
And I didn't actually warn you about this because we come upstairs pretty quickly. Fantastic. But next to you, there is a Spark bag. If you can reach in there, take out a number, and then you're going to have to think on your feet a little bit.
I should say for anyone watching that I didn't know this was going to happen.
No, you didn't. No.
So, number 8.
Okay, number 8. Right, that's a good one. We've not had that. So number 8 is your mic drop moment. Okay, one thought to leave us with. Okay, choose one reflection, piece of advice, a mantra that you live by, whatever it may be. Then you drop your mic.
God, that's very deep to end the podcast with. Yeah. Follow your own path, not what everyone else thinks you should be doing. Okay. I think it's, and I've kind of, I've gone along on a journey on my career, QS, but I've kind of got to where I am now thinking of, I've been doing what I thought I should have been doing. Yeah. And actually I want to ensure that the next 20 years are focused on what I actually want to be doing. Yeah. And it's still within this context.
Yes.
But it's, you've got to ensure that, and I did a post on LinkedIn today. It was about working out what your success goals are for the end, for the end, and then trying to reverse engineer that. So you don't end up doing something that hasn't ticked your boxes.
Fantastic. Follow your own path. Brilliant. Okay, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. Some great discussions there. And thank you for joining us. If you would like some strategic advice, please do grab me on spark.london or via LinkedIn. And Steve's links will be in the show notes as well. Please do like, subscribe, do all that kind of thing. Get the conversations out there far and wide. Until next time, thank you very much.